They say that the worst kind of betrayal doesn't make a sound. It doesn't crash like a plate against a wall, and it doesn't scream like a siren. It is quiet. It is the sound of a printer humming in the middle of the night. It is the soft click of a mouse. It is the silence of an empty house that was supposed to be full of dreams. I was sitting at my kitchen island. It was 2 a.m. The only light came from the screen of my laptop, casting a cold, blue glow over my hands. My hands were shaking. Not a violent shake, just a small, steady tremor that I couldn't control. In front of me, on the screen, was a receipt. It wasn't for office space. It wasn't for high-end computer servers or consulting fees. It wasn't for any of the things my husband, David, had told me he needed to launch his startup. The receipt was from a store called Little Miracles Interiors. The item description read, hand-painted crib, antique white. Matching changing table. Rocking chair, velvet finish. David was supposed to be 300 miles away in Chicago. He was supposed to be meeting with investors and setting up the headquarters for Miller Logistics, the company we had saved 15 years for. He had $50,000 of our money, our life savings, our rainy day fund, the money for our daughter's future college tuition, in his business account. I looked at the total on the screen. $4,000 for a nursery set. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe, but the air felt thin. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick. 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 Every second felt like a mockery. I didn't scream. I just sat there, feeling the cold counter against my elbows, realizing that the man I had slept next to for 12 years wasn't building a business. He was building a nest. But not for us. To understand why this broke me, you have to understand who we were. Or who I thought we were. My name is Elena. I am 42 years old, and for the last decade, I have been the rock of the Miller family. David and I met in our late 20s. He was charming, ambitious, full of big ideas but always short on execution. I was the steady one. The planner. I worked as a senior nurse at the city hospital. Long shifts. Aching feet. Missed holidays. We had a good life, though. Simple. We have a 10-year-old daughter, Sophie. She is the light of my life. David was a good father, or so it seemed. He coached her soccer team. He made pancakes on Sundays. He kissed me on the forehead every morning before he left for his sales job. But David always wanted more. He hated answering to a boss. For years, he talked about the big idea. He wanted to start his own logistics consultancy firm. Elena, he would say, his eyes shining over dinner, once I get this off the ground, you can retire. You won't have to work those 12-hour shifts anymore. I'll take care of everything. I promise. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. We were partners. For 5 years, we scrimped and saved. I took extra shifts on weekends. We didn't go on vacations. We drove old cars that rattled when you went over 40 miles per hour. When Sophie asked for the latest expensive sneakers, we explained that we were saving for Daddy's dream. Even she understood. She was proud of him. 2 months ago, David came home with a bottle of sparkling cider. He slammed a folder down on the table. I'm ready, Elle, he said. I have the contacts. I have the plan. I just need the capital. He showed me charts and graphs. He showed me potential office spaces in Chicago, a city where the market was apparently booming. He needed startup cash. A lot of it. $50,000, he said. It covers the lease for the first year, the equipment, and the legal fees. It's a risk, honey, I know. But if we don't do this now, I'll never forgive myself. I looked at our savings account. It was everything we had. It was safety. It was security. But then I looked at David. He looked so tired of his regular job. He looked desperate for a win. I loved him. And isn't that what marriage is? Supporting each other's dreams? Okay, I had whispered. Let's do it. I remember the day I transferred the money. My finger hovered over the confirm button on the bank website. My stomach did a flip-flop. You're the best wife in the world, David had said, hugging me from behind. He buried his face in my neck. I'm going to make you so proud. You'll see. He left for Chicago 3 weeks ago. He said he needed to be there to oversee the renovations of the office and interview staff. It's going to be a grind, Al, he told me as he packed his suitcase. I'll be working 18-hour days. I might not be able to call much. But I'm doing this for us. I drove him to the train station. I kissed him goodbye. I watched him walk away, looking handsome in his coat, rolling his suitcase behind him. I drove home feeling lonely but hopeful. That was the last time I saw him. Since then, the calls had been brief. Hey honey, just finished a meeting. Exhausted. Love you. Click. Can't talk, meeting the contractor. The office floors are looking great. Click. I missed him. Sophie missed him. Then, tonight happened. It was a Tuesday. I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs to check my email on the desktop computer we kept in the study. David had his own laptop with him, but he had left his cloud account logged in on the home PC. He usually never did that. He was careful. But he must have been in a rush when he printed his train tickets. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. I was just going to check my own email. But when the browser opened, his inbox was there. I was about to log him out. I moved the mouse to the corner. But then, a subject line caught my eye. It wasn't from a contractor. It wasn't from a bank. Order confirmation number 4492, Lullaby Lane Furniture. My hand froze. Lullaby Lane? That sounded like a baby store. Maybe it was a gift? His sister, my sister-in-law, was pregnant. Maybe he was surprising her? I clicked on it. The shipping address wasn't his sister's house. It wasn't our house. It was an address in a suburb just outside of Chicago. A residential address. 142 Maplewood Drive. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I scrolled down. Item, Welcome Home Daddy onesie, blue. Item, Our Little Prince wall decal. My heart stopped. Blue. Prince. I sat back in the chair, the leather creaking under me. My mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe he was buying it for a client? A really important client? But then I saw the delivery note at the bottom. Note for driver, please ring the doorbell. Vanessa is home all day. Don't leave it on the porch. Vanessa. The name hung in the air like smoke. I didn't know a Vanessa. My hand started to tremble. I minimized the email and went to his sent folder. I needed to know. I felt like I was drowning, but I forced myself to keep swimming deeper. I found an email sent 3 days ago. To vanessal23@email.com. Subject, almost there. I clicked it. Hey babe. The transfer cleared. The investors, LOL, finally came through. I'll be there on Friday for good. I can't wait to see the nursery. Tell Junior his daddy is coming home to his real family. Love you, D. I read it once. I read it twice. The investors, LOL. He was laughing. He was laughing about me. I was the investor. Sophie and I were the investors. I felt a physical blow to my chest, harder than any punch. I doubled over, gasping for air. The room spun. He wasn't starting a business. He wasn't building our future. He was using our life savings to start a new life with another woman. A woman named Vanessa. And they were having a baby. For a moment, I thought I was going to throw up. I ran to the kitchen sink and gripped the edge of the granite. I stared out the window into the dark backyard. The swing set David had built for Sophie when she was 5 was rusting in the moonlight. He had lied about everything. The office. The business plan. The 18-hour days. He had stolen $50,000 from us. I stood there in the dark kitchen for a long time. The shock began to fade, and something else took its place. It started in my stomach, hot and sharp. It moved up my throat. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. He thought I was the naive nurse. The supportive wife who would sit at home and wait for his crumbs. He thought he had pulled off the perfect heist. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. I walked back to the study. The screen was still glowing. Vanessa is home all day. Okay, David, I whispered to the empty room. You want a new life? Let's see if you can afford it. I sat down. I didn't cry. I picked up a pen and a notepad. The normal life was over. The grieving could wait. Right now, I had work to do. I didn't sleep that night. Sleep felt like a luxury for people who had safe lives, for women whose husbands weren't building nurseries for other women. Instead, I became a detective in my own home. I spent the next 4 hours combing through every digital inch of David's life. Once I knew what to look for, the signs were everywhere. They had been there for years, hiding in plain sight, camouflaged by my trust. I found a hidden folder on his cloud drive. It was labeled Tax Receipts 2022. It sounded so boring, so safe. No wife looks in a folder like that. I clicked it open. It wasn't taxes. It was photos. Hundreds of them. There was David, 3 years ago, at a beach. He was wearing swim trunks I had never seen. His arm was around a woman with long, dark hair. Vanessa. She looked young, maybe in her late 20s. She was laughing, her head thrown back, looking at him like he was the center of the universe. I scrolled. David and Vanessa at a Christmas market 2 years ago. David holding a birthday cake with candles that said 30. David kissing her forehead in a park. And then, the dates. They matched up perfectly with his business trips. The logistics seminars in Miami? A weekend with Vanessa. The conference in Seattle? A getaway with Vanessa. My heart didn't race anymore. It beat with a heavy, dull thud. 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 Like a hammer hitting wet sand. I realized with a sick feeling that this wasn't just a fling. This was a parallel life. He had been playing house with her for 3 years while coming home to eat my pot roast and sleep in my bed. He had divided himself in two, and I had gotten the shell while she got the soul. And now, with the startup, he was making his final move. He was cashing out. He was taking our history, converting it into cash, and using it to fund his future with her. The sun began to rise. A gray, watery light filtered through the blinds. I heard footsteps upstairs. Sophie. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't let her see me like this. I ran to the bathroom, splashed freezing cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My skin looked gray. I looked like a ghost. Pull yourself together, Elena, I hissed at my reflection. For her. I put on my robe and went to the kitchen. I went through the motions. Coffee. Toast. Eggs. Sophie came bounding down the stairs, her hair messy, clutching her school bag. Morning, Mom, she chirped. She grabbed an apple. Did Dad call last night? Did he say when he's coming back? The question felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I forced a smile. It felt tight, like my face might crack. No, sweetie. He's very busy setting up the office. Big meetings. Sophie took a bite of the apple. I miss him. But it's cool that he's gonna be a boss, right? Maybe we can visit his office in Chicago soon? I turned away, pretending to wash a dish so she wouldn't see my eyes fill up with tears. Yeah, baby. Maybe soon. I dropped her off at school. I watched her walk through the gates, waving at her friends. She was so innocent. She had no idea that her father was currently assembling a crib for a replacement child. Once I was back in the car, the silence crashed down on me again. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I could call him. I could scream. I could demand answers. But what would that do? He was 300 miles away. He had the money. If I confronted him now, he would panic. He would drain the rest of the accounts. He would disappear. He would spin a story to make me look crazy. No. I needed to be smarter than him. I needed to be colder than him. I drove to the bank, our local branch where we had banked for 15 years. I sat in the office of Mrs. Gable, the branch manager. She knew us. She had given Sophie lollipops when she was a toddler. Elena, she said warmly. How are you? How is David's big venture going? We saw the large transfer go out a few weeks ago. Very exciting. I sat very still. I folded my hands in my lap. I had rehearsed what I was going to say. It is exciting, I said. My voice was steady. Actually, that's why I'm here. David is swamped in Chicago. He's found a great property, but there's been a slight change in strategy. We need to move the remaining assets into a different holding account. A secure one. For tax purposes. Mrs. Gable nodded, tapping on her keyboard. Of course. Since it's a joint business account, you have full access. David set it up that way so you could handle the books, right? Exactly, I said. David's arrogance was his weakness. He had set up the Miller Logistics account as a joint account with me because he was lazy. He hated paperwork. He wanted me to be able to pay the bills and handle the taxes while he played CEO. He never thought I'd look closely. He never thought I'd betray him because he thought I was too weak to do it. Let's see, Mrs. Gable said, frowning at the screen. The 50,000 is mostly gone, Elena. There have been a lot of withdrawals in Chicago. I felt the blood drain from my face. How much is left? About 12,000, she said. And, wait. There's a pending transfer here. Scheduled for tomorrow. For the remaining 12,000. Going to a V. Lewis personal account. V. Lewis. Vanessa. He was draining the dregs. He was going to leave us with zero. Cancel it, I said. Mrs. Gable looked up, surprised by the sharpness in my tone. I beg your pardon? Cancel the pending transfer, I said, leaning forward. That's the mistake. That's the wrong vendor. David must have keyed it in wrong. I need to move that 12,000 out. Now. Today. Okay, she said slowly. Where would you like to move it? My personal savings, I said. The one David doesn't have access to. Mrs. Gable paused. She looked at me. She saw the lack of makeup. The shaking hands. The look in my eyes that said don't ask me questions unless you want me to scream. She was a smart woman. She didn't ask. Done, she typed. The transfer is cancelled. The funds are moving to your personal account now. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. $12,000. It wasn't the 50 he stole, but it was something. It was a start. One more thing, I said. David bought a lot of equipment before he left. Laptops, a server, some high-end office furniture. He put it on the business credit card. The one with the $50,000 limit. Yes, I see the charges here, Mrs. Gable said. I need to report the card as compromised, I lied. We think someone stole the numbers. Freeze the card. Mrs. Gable nodded. I'll freeze it immediately. No more charges will go through. That would stop him from buying any more velvet rocking chairs. I left the bank feeling lighter, but the rage was still burning. I had saved the scraps, but he still had the main course. He was living in a house furnished with my retirement. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I pulled out my phone. I went back to the emails I had forwarded to myself. I found the address again. 142 Maplewood Drive, Oak Park, Illinois. I opened a real estate app. I typed in the address. It wasn't a rental. Sold 2 months ago. Price $450,000. I scrolled down to the buyer information. It wasn't public on the app, but the sale date aligned perfectly with when David had cashed out some of his 401k early, a penalty he said we had to pay to invest in ourselves. He hadn't just rented an office. He had put a down payment on a house. I looked at the picture of the house. It was a beautiful Victorian with a wraparound porch. It was the kind of house I had always wanted. The kind of house we talked about buying when we retired. And he had bought it for her. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was David. My thumb hovered over the screen. If I answered, could I keep my voice steady? Could I pretend I didn't know he was a thief and a liar? I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, I answered. Hey, honey, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. David's voice was rushed. He sounded annoyed. I'm at the store trying to buy some supplies for the office, and the card just declined. Did you pay the bill? What's going on? He was at the store. Probably buying paint for the nursery. Or maybe a stroller. That's weird, I said, looking at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't touch the bill. Maybe the bank flagged it? Fraud protection? Well, call them, he snapped. I look like an idiot here standing at the checkout. Fix it, Elena. I need this stuff for the opening next week. The opening, I repeated. Right. The big launch. Yes, the launch. Just call the bank, okay? I have to go. He hung up. He didn't ask about Sophie. He didn't ask about my day. He just wanted his money. I lowered the phone. He wanted a launch? I would give him a launch. I wasn't just going to freeze his cards. I was going to liquidate his life. I started the car engine. I wasn't going home. I was going to the storage unit where David kept his inventory, the few things he actually had bought for the business to make it look legitimate to me. Expensive tools, a few 3D printers he claimed he needed for prototyping. If he was going to steal my past, I was going to sell his future. I drove toward the storage facility, and for the first time in 24 hours, a cold, hard smile touched my lips. The storage unit smelled like dust and stale air. It was a 10 by 10 metal box on the edge of town, the place where David had stored the initial capital assets for Miller Logistics. I punched in the code. 0819, Sophie's birthday. Even his secrets were locked behind the people he was betraying. The metal door rattled as I shoved it upward. The screech of the rusty tracks echoed in the empty hallway, loud and harsh. Inside, there they were. The 3D printers still in their boxes. The high-end laser cutter. The ergonomic office chairs that cost $800 each. He had bought them 6 months ago, telling me we needed to buy before the fiscal year ends for tax reasons. I looked at the boxes. They weren't tools for a business. They were props. They were the costumes he wore to convince me to hand over the checkbook. I didn't feel sentimental. I felt efficient. I took out my phone. I didn't bother with eBay or anywhere that would take days to process. I went straight to a local reseller app and a forum for tech equipment. I snapped photos. Brand new industrial 3D printer. Retail, $4,500. Price, $1,500. Must go today. Cash only. Laser cutter. Retail, $3,000. Price, $1,000. Cash only. I listed everything. The prices were obscenely low. I wanted them gone. I wanted the cash in my hand, physical and real, something he couldn't transfer to Vanessa with a click of a mouse. Within 20 minutes, my phone started buzzing. People love a desperate woman, or at least, they love the bargains she offers. A guy named Mike arrived an hour later in a pickup truck. He looked at the printer, then at me. I was standing there in my nurse's scrubs, I hadn't even changed, looking exhausted but wired. "Is this stolen?" Mike asked, kicking the box gently. "Price is too good to be true, lady." "Not stolen," I said, my voice flat. "My husband is moving. Unexpectedly. I'm just liquidating the inventory he left behind." Mike shrugged. He didn't care about the story. He handed me a stack of $100 bills. I counted them. The paper felt rough against my thumb. By 4 p.m., the storage unit was empty. Just a concrete floor and a few dust bunnies. I had $4,000 in cash in my purse. It was a fraction of what he spent, but it was mine. I got back in my car. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from David. "Bank says card is still frozen. What is taking so long? I need to pay the movers tomorrow." The movers? Of course. He was moving the furniture into the love nest. I typed back. My fingers flew across the screen. "So sorry, honey. Bank says it's a security breach. I have to go in person tomorrow morning to sign an affidavit. It will be unlocked by noon. Just hold tight. Love you." I hit send. The love you tasted like ash in my mouth. I wasn't going to the bank tomorrow. I was going to a lawyer. The lawyer's office was quiet. It smelled of lemon polish and expensive coffee. Mr. Henderson was an old family friend of my father's, a man who had handled divorces for 30 years. He listened to me without interrupting. I showed him the emails. The receipt for the crib. The house listing in Chicago. The bank transfers. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Elena," he said softly. "This is significant. He has committed what we call dissipation of marital assets. He's spending family money on a paramour." "I know what he's doing," I said, leaning forward. "I want to know what I can do. I don't just want a divorce, Mr. Henderson. I want my daughter's future back. He stole her college fund to buy a nursery for another kid." Mr. Henderson nodded grimly. "We can file for an emergency freeze on all assets. We can serve him papers. But since he is in Illinois and you are here, and the money is already largely spent on a house, it's going to be a fight to get the cash back. Unless what? Unless we catch him in a way that forces his hand. If he thinks you don't know, he might continue to act recklessly. But legally, the moment you file, the war starts. He might hide assets. He might put the Chicago house in a trust for the girlfriend." I thought about the house. The Victorian with the porch. "He thinks I'm the dutiful, stupid wife," I said. "He thinks I'm at home fixing his credit card issues." "Use that," Mr. Henderson said. "Gather every piece of evidence. And secure whatever liquid cash you can." "You said you sold the equipment?" "Yes. 4,000 cash. Keep it. Use it for living expenses. Don't deposit it where he can see it." I left the office as the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple color. I went home. Sophie was at a sleepover at her best friend's house. The house was completely silent. I walked into the bedroom. I looked at the closet. David's clothes were still there. His suits. His shoes. The life he had left behind as a placeholder. I grabbed a suitcase from the top shelf. I wasn't going to wait for him to come back and lie to my face. I wasn't going to wait for the divorce papers to arrive in the mail while he played happy family in Chicago. I packed my bag. Not a lot. Just jeans, a few sweaters, my comfortable driving shoes. Then, I went to the safe in the back of the closet. I took out the documents. Our marriage license. Sophie's birth certificate. The deed to our house. I walked into the kitchen and sat at the table. I opened my laptop again. I needed to know exactly where he was. I went to the Find My Device feature. We shared an account for the iPads. He had turned the location off on his phone, but he had forgotten about the iPad he took with him for presentations. The dot blinked on the map. Oak Park, Illinois. 142 Maplewood Drive. He wasn't at an office. He wasn't at a hotel. He was at the house. It was 8 p.m. If I drove through the night, I could be there by morning. I could be there just as they were waking up. Just as he was making coffee in his new kitchen, maybe kissing Vanessa on the cheek, maybe touching her pregnant belly. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. I needed the image of his betrayal burned into my retinas so I would never, ever weaken. And I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream at him on the lawn. That's what a crazy ex-wife does. No, I was going to be the supportive wife. The wife who wanted to surprise her hard-working husband on his big launch day. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. Elena? He answered on the first ring. He sounded stressed. Did you fix the card? I'm working on it, David, I said, making my voice sound cheerful. Actually, I have a surprise. I know how stressed you are. So I sent you a little care package. It should be arriving tomorrow morning. A care package? He sounded suspicious. To where? The office? Yes, the office address you gave me, I lied. I knew the office address was just a P.O. box he checked. But I wasn't sending a package. I was the package. Oh. Okay. Thanks, Elle. Look, I really need that money released. I know, honey. Just wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow everything will be clear. Okay. Good night. Good night, David. Give my love to the team. I hung up. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed the envelope with the $4,000. I walked out of the house and locked the door. I got into my car and turned the nose north, toward the highway. Toward Chicago. The drive was 6 hours. I had plenty of time to think about exactly what I was going to say when he opened the door. The highway at 4 a.m. is a lonely place. It's just you, the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt, and the headlights cutting through the black dark. I drank 3 cups of terrible gas station coffee to stay awake. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. Every time I blinked, I saw the receipt. Antique white crib. Every time I exhaled, I saw the email. Tell Junior his daddy is coming home. I reached the outskirts of Chicago just as the sky was turning a pale, bruised purple. The city skyline was a jagged silhouette in the distance, but I wasn't heading for the skyscrapers. I was heading for the suburbs. The quiet, tree-lined streets where people moved to raise families. I turned onto Maplewood Drive at 6:15 a.m. It was a beautiful street. The kind of street with big oak trees that formed a tunnel of leaves overhead. The lawns were manicured. There were bicycles left on porches. It was the American dream, neatly packaged. And there was number 142. I slowed the car to a crawl. I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked 3 houses down, tucking my car behind a large SUV so I wouldn't be immediately visible. I turned off the engine. The silence rushed in. The house was yellow. A soft, buttery yellow with white shutters. It had a wide porch with a swing. It looked warm. It looked inviting. It looked expensive. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I watched the house like a hawk. At 6:30 a.m., a light flicked on in the upstairs window. The master bedroom. I imagined David in there. Was he waking up? Was he stretching? Was he reaching over to kiss her? At 6:45 a.m., the front door opened. My breath hitched in my throat. David stepped out. He was wearing a gray hoodie and sweatpants. He was holding a mug of coffee. He looked relaxed. He looked younger. He scratched his chest and took a sip of the coffee, looking out at the morning sun. He looked like a man who didn't have a care in the world. He certainly didn't look like a man stressed about a business launch. Then, the screen door opened again. A woman stepped out. Vanessa. She was beautiful, in a natural, effortless way. Dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing a loose t-shirt and pajama pants. But what stopped my heart wasn't her face. It was her stomach. She was heavily pregnant. 7, maybe 8 months. She walked up behind David and wrapped her arms around his waist. He leaned back into her, resting his head on her shoulder. It was such an intimate, familiar gesture. It wasn't the passion of a new affair, it was the comfort of a long-term marriage. And then, a little boy ran out. Junior, I whispered. He was small, maybe 3 years old. He had David's curly hair. He ran around their legs, holding a toy truck. David laughed, bent down, and scooped the boy up. He kissed the boy's cheek. I watched them. The happy family. The father, the mother, the son, the baby on the way. They were living the life I had paid for. That hoodie David was wearing? I bought it for his birthday last year. That mug? It looked like one from our kitchen set that went missing a month ago. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and angry. This wasn't just cheating. This was replacement. He hadn't just found someone else, he had replicated our life, improved it, and funded it with my blood and sweat. I opened the car door. I didn't slam it. I stepped out onto the cool pavement. I smoothed down my shirt. I took a deep breath of the morning air. I started walking. My footsteps sounded loud on the sidewalk. Clip. Clop. Clip. Clop. I walked right up the driveway. David was busy pointing at a bird in the tree for the little boy. Vanessa was rubbing her belly. They didn't see me until I was 10 feet away. David, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was calm. Deadly calm. David froze. His back went rigid. He slowly turned around, the smile sliding off his face like wet paint. When he saw me standing there, his eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Elena, he stammered. His face went completely pale. Vanessa looked up, confused. She shielded her eyes from the sun. David? Who is this? She didn't know. The way she looked at me, with curiosity, not guilt, told me everything. She didn't know he was married. Or maybe she thought I was the ex. I walked closer. I didn't stop until I was standing right at the bottom of the porch steps. I'm the investor, I said, looking straight at David. David put the little boy down. Go inside, buddy. Go with mommy. David, what's going on? Vanessa asked, her voice rising in panic. She put a hand on David's arm. Who is she? I'm his wife, I said. Vanessa dropped her hand. She took a step back, stumbling slightly. What? I'm Elena. His wife of 12 years, I said, my voice steady, though my insides were screaming. The woman who lives in the house he leaves every Monday. The woman who gave him $50,000 3 weeks ago to start a company. I looked at the house. Nice headquarters, David. Is the nursery the boardroom? David stepped in front of Vanessa, as if to protect her from me. That gesture hurt more than anything else. He was protecting her. Elena, stop, he hissed, his voice trembling. Not here. Not in front of them. Let's go somewhere and talk. Talk? I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. We're done talking, David. You stopped talking to me the moment you used Sophie's college fund to buy a crib for your secret baby. Vanessa let out a small gasp. She looked at David, horror dawning on her face. David? You said the divorce was finalized 3 years ago. You said she was crazy. You said she wouldn't sign the papers. I see, I said, looking at Vanessa. The crazy ex-wife story. A classic. Elena, please, David begged. He was sweating now. I can explain. I was going to tell you. I needed time to figure out the finances. The finances? I stepped up onto the first step of the porch. David flinched. I figured them out for you, I said. I went to the bank yesterday, David. I saw the transfers. I saw the receipts. You went to the bank? Yes. And I have some bad news for your launch. I canceled the transfer. The last $12,000? It's gone. It's back in my account. David's face crumpled. Elena, you can't do that. I have a mortgage payment due on Tuesday. I have contractors to pay. Not my problem, I said. And the credit card? The one with the 50,000 limit? I froze it. Reported it stolen. David looked like he was going to be sick. He looked at Vanessa, then back at me. He was trapped. Why are you doing this? He whispered. I was building something. You were stealing. I finally raised my voice. The anger exploded out of me. You were stealing from me. From your daughter. You emptied our life savings to play house with another woman. The little boy, Junior, started to cry. He sensed the tension. Vanessa picked him up, tears streaming down her face. She looked at David with disgust. You used her money? You told me your business was taking off. You told me you were a partner. I am. David shouted, losing control. I am trying to take care of everyone. It's complicated. It's not complicated, I said. It's a crime. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the printout of the receipt for the crib. I crumpled it into a ball and threw it at his chest. I hope the crib was worth it, David. Because it cost you your marriage. It cost you your daughter. And if I have my way, it's going to cost you your freedom. I turned to Vanessa. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this. But check your bank accounts, honey. If he stole from me, he'll steal from you. I turned around and walked back down the driveway. Elena. Wait. David yelled. He started to run after me. I spun around. Don't follow me. If you come near me, or Sophie, or my house, I will call the police. My lawyer is already drafting the papers. You wanted a new life? You got it. But you're paying for it yourself. I got back into my car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the key in the ignition. I saw David standing in the driveway, looking small and pathetic in his gray hoodie. Vanessa was crying on the porch, holding her son. I started the engine and drove away. I didn't look back. But as I turned the corner, the adrenaline faded, and the reality hit me. I had won the battle. I had humiliated him. I had saved the last of the money. But my life, my real life, was over. I was driving back to an empty house. I was driving back to tell my 10-year-old daughter that her hero was a liar. I pulled over to the side of the road 2 blocks away, buried my face in my hands, and finally, I screamed. The drive back home was the longest 6 hours of my life. When I drove to Chicago, I was fueled by rage. I was a missile aimed at a target. But driving back? I was just a woman with an empty tank, returning to a house that was now just a building, not a home. My phone rang incessantly. David calling. David calling. David calling. I didn't block him. I just turned the volume down until it was a low, insect-like buzz on the passenger seat. I needed to keep the line open for the lawyers, but I didn't need to hear his voice. I didn't need to hear him beg, or blame, or try to gaslight me into believing that I was the villain for popping his bubble. I arrived home in the late afternoon. The sky was overcast, gray clouds hanging low and heavy. I walked into the house. It smelled of lemon pledge and stale coffee. I saw the empty space on the wall where a picture of the three of us used to hang. I had taken it down before I left. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank wall. Then, the front door opened. It was Mrs. Miller, David's mother. She had picked up Sophie from school because I told her I had a work emergency. "Elena," she called out. "We're back. Sophie, go put your bag away." Sophie ran into the room, her face bright. "Mom. Grandma bought me ice cream." She stopped when she saw me. Kids are intuitive. They can smell disaster like animals smell a storm. She saw my red eyes. She saw the way I was sitting, hunched over, holding myself together. "Mom?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What's wrong?" David's mother walked in, looking concerned. "Elena, you look terrible. Is everything okay at the hospital?" I stood up. My legs felt heavy. This was it. The moment the blast wave hit the innocent bystanders. "Sophie, honey," I said, kneeling down so I was at her eye level. "Come here." She walked over slowly. I took her small hands in mine. They were sticky from the ice cream. "Mommy needs to tell you something," I said. I had rehearsed this 1,000 times in the car, but the words felt like broken glass in my throat. "You know how Daddy has been away in Chicago for work?" "Yeah? Well, Daddy isn't going to be coming back to live here." Sophie's face crumpled. "Why? Is he sick?" "No, baby. He's not sick. But Daddy made some choices. He decided that he wants to live in Chicago. And he has another family there." I couldn't lie to her. I couldn't tell her he needed space. She needed to know that she wasn't the reason he left. Sophie stared at me, trying to process the words. "Another family? Like, a new mom?" "A different lady," I said gently. "And a little brother. And a baby on the way." The silence in the room was deafening. Behind me, I heard David's mother gasp. A sharp, horrified intake of air. "Elena," she whispered. That can't be true." Sophie started to cry. It wasn't a loud tantrum. It was a soft, confused weeping that broke my heart into a million pieces. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. I rocked her back and forth. "I've got you," I whispered into her hair. "I'm right here. We're going to be okay. I promise." Over Sophie's shoulder, I looked at my mother-in-law. Her face was pale. She looked like she was going to faint. He has a secret family," she stammered. "My David?" "Ask him," I said coldly. "He's in Chicago. 142 Maplewood Drive." That evening was a blur of tears and phone calls. David's parents called him. I don't know what was said, but I heard his father shouting on the phone in the hallway. The golden boy had fallen. The son they bragged about, the entrepreneur, was a fraud. Later that night, after Sophie finally fell asleep in my bed, exhausted from crying, I went downstairs to the kitchen. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a voicemail. I pressed play. David's voice filled the quiet kitchen. He sounded drunk, or maybe just broken. "Elena. You really did it, didn't you? The financing for the house fell through. The bank saw the canceled transfer and the frozen credit card. They pulled the mortgage approval. The sellers are threatening to sue me for breach of contract." He paused. I heard a heavy sigh. "Vanessa kicked me out. She didn't know, Elena. She thought I was divorced. When you left, she went through my phone. She saw the texts to you. She threw my clothes on the lawn. I'm sitting in a motel room. I have nothing. Are you happy? You destroyed everything. I listened to the message. I listened to the self-pity in his voice. I destroyed everything? He still didn't get it. He thought the money was the foundation. He didn't realize the foundation was trust. I didn't delete the message. I saved it. It was evidence for the divorce proceedings. The next few days were a whirlwind of public consequences. In our small town, news travels fast. I didn't have to go around telling people. The truth has a weight to it, it spreads on its own. I went to the grocery store 3 days later. I ran into Sarah, the wife of David's best friend. She looked at me with wide, sympathetic eyes. Elena, she said, touching my arm. Mike told me. About David. About the money. Yeah, I said, putting a carton of milk in my cart. Is it true, she whispered, that he spent your retirement on a nursery? Every cent, I said. And the college fund. Sarah shook her head. Mike is furious. He blocked David's number. He said he can't be friends with a man who does that to his wife and kid. I felt a small flicker of warmth. I had been afraid of the shame. I thought people would look at me and see a fool. A woman who was duped. But they didn't see a fool. They saw a survivor. And they saw David for exactly what he was, a coward. Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, called me on Friday. We have filed the papers, he said. David has been served. Since he is currently indisposed, in a motel, and has no access to funds, he's in a very weak position. Good, I said. However, Mr. Henderson continued, Vanessa has also contacted us. Or rather, her lawyer has. My stomach tightened. What does she want? She wants to cooperate, he said. She wants to provide evidence that she was unaware of the marriage. She wants to ensure she isn't named as a co-conspirator in the financial fraud. She's willing to hand over bank statements showing how much of your money he spent on her. She wants to return the furniture. I closed my eyes. The furniture. The crib. The velvet rocking chair. I don't want the furniture, I said softly. I don't want anything that touched that life. Tell her to sell it. Tell her to keep the money for her baby. She's going to need it. Mr. Henderson was silent for a moment. That is very generous of you, Elena. It's not generous, I said. It's pity. She's alone, pregnant, with a liar for an ex-boyfriend. I at least have my dignity. I hung up the phone. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard. Sophie was on the swing set, pushing herself back and forth. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was just swinging. The storm had passed. The house was still standing. But the silence in the house was different now. It wasn't the silence of waiting for a husband to come home. It was the silence of a clean slate. I had burnt his false kingdom to the ground. Now, I had to figure out how to grow something new from the ashes. It has been exactly 1 year since I drove away from that yellow house on Maplewood Drive. Time is a funny thing. When you are in the middle of a crisis, a minute feels like an hour. But when you are rebuilding, months slip by like water through your fingers. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. It wasn't the dramatic courtroom battle you see in movies. It was quiet. It was papers signed in a conference room with a long mahogany table. David sat on the other side. He looked different. The arrogance was gone. The entrepreneurial spark he always bragged about had been replaced by a heavy, gray exhaustion. He had lost weight. His hair was thinning. He looked like a man who had bet everything on red, and the ball landed on black. He signed the papers without looking at me. Because of the financial fraud, the judge was not lenient. I kept our house. I kept full custody of Sophie, with him getting visitation every other weekend, supervised at first, until he could prove he had a stable residence. He didn't fight it. He couldn't. He had no money left to pay a lawyer to fight. I found out later that the startup capital, my $50,000, was completely gone. Between the down payment on the house in Chicago, the furniture, the travel, and the legal fees he incurred trying to fix the mess with the sellers, he was left with nothing. He had to move back in with his parents for 6 months. He is now working in sales again, an entry-level job at a company that is half the size of the one he left. He is back to answering to a boss. The very fate he tried to steal from me to escape. As for Vanessa? She kept her word. She sold everything. The crib, the rocking chair, the expensive wall art. She sent a check to my lawyer for $3,000. It was a drop in the bucket compared to what was lost, but the gesture mattered. I heard through the grapevine that she had her baby, a girl. She moved to a different state to be closer to her family. She and David are not together. The fantasy they built couldn't survive the harsh light of reality. Their relationship was built on a lie, and lies are a terrible foundation for a family. But this story isn't about them. It's about us. Me and Sophie. We painted the house. That was the first thing I did. I couldn't stand the beige walls that David had chosen years ago. We painted the living room a soft, sage green. We painted Sophie's room a bright, sunny yellow. We reclaimed the space. I took the promotion at the hospital. It means more responsibility, and yes, sometimes my feet still ache at the end of the day. But now, when I deposit my paycheck, I know exactly where it is going. I see the numbers in the savings account growing, slowly but surely. Every dollar in that account is honest. Every dollar is mine. Sophie has been resilient. Children are stronger than we give them credit for. She was angry for a while. She refused to speak to her father for the first 2 months. But slowly, she started to heal. Last Sunday, David came to pick her up for an afternoon at the park. I watched from the window as his car pulled up. It was an older model sedan, rusted around the wheel wells. Sophie ran out to meet him. She didn't run with the same blind adoration she used to have. She walked. She hugged him, but it was a careful hug. David looked up at the window. He saw me standing there. He raised a hand in a small, awkward wave. There was so much regret in his eyes. He realized, too late, that he had traded a diamond for a piece of glass. He had a wife who would have walked through fire for him, and a daughter who thought he hung the moon. And he threw it away for a fresh start that rotted before it even began. I didn't wave back. I just nodded. Acknowledgement. Nothing more, nothing less. I turned away from the window and walked into my kitchen. It was quiet. The dishwasher was humming. The smell of roasting chicken filled the air. For a long time, I was afraid of being alone. I thought that being a single mother in my 40s was a failure. I thought I needed a partner to complete the picture. But as I stood there, chopping vegetables on the granite counter I had paid for, I realized something. I wasn't lonely. I was peaceful. I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable. I had looked into the abyss of financial ruin and emotional devastation. And I didn't fall. I climbed out. I saved what could be saved, and I let go of what needed to burn. I am not just a nurse. I am not just a mother. I am the architect of my own life now. And this time, I'm building it on solid ground. David thought he was the main character of our story. He thought I was just the supporting actress, the financier, the safety net. He learned the hard way that you should never underestimate the quiet woman who keeps the world turning while you dream. He wanted a new life, and in a way, he gave me one. He gave me a life where I don't have to wonder if I'm being lied to. A life where I know my own strength. There are still days when I feel the anger. Days when I look at the balance of Sophie's college fund and wish I could scream. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. Forgiveness is a heavy weight to carry, so I decided not to carry it yet. Instead, I carry indifference. And that feels like freedom. So, I want to ask you. If you found those receipts, if you found out your partner was building a secret life with your money, would you have gone to the house? Would you have confronted them like I did? Or would you have quietly filed the papers and walked away? And more importantly, do you think a marriage can ever recover from financial infidelity, or is the trust gone forever the moment the money disappears? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from scratch, just know, you are stronger than you think. Until next time, take care of your heart, and keep your eyes open.